Nobody has a good word to say about the way they approached this podcast, the manner in which they spoke to Bryce Mitchell. There's actually some people out there saying that this is the first misstep by the Jaxxon podcast, as if it was like a random mistake, as if it hasn't been shit the whole time. Just in the last week or two, I've seen some abysmal podcasts. We had that situation with Kevin Holland, which could have been avoided. Rampage did a decent job, but Bear just didn't handle that very well. Looked like a deer caught in the headlights. Totally unprofessional. We had the Jorge Masvidal podcast from 2 days ago, which was absolutely abysmal. He was recounting the story of when he attacked and jumped Colby Covington from behind. Tried to make out like it was two fighters that were fighting each other in a car park. Then the other person usually needs to know that he's involved in a fight, not getting jumped from behind like a But when you watched it, this guy hates Colby Covington. You can have your own opinion. A lot of people do. Doesn't put the best foot forward all the time, let me tell you. But Rampage and Bear, as the professional podcasters they are, didn't push back, didn't play devil's advocate, just jumped on Jorge Masvidal's dick and went along with the whole thing, being completely derogatory towards Colby, not having the wherewithal in terms of being an MMA podcast that you might have to do an interview with him down the line somewhere. That's fine if you're someone like me who doesn't give a flying fuck about ever talking to these guys. But if you're a up-and-coming podcast that everybody's watching, it doesn't help to be sitting there nodding along like a little robot because Jorge is the man and he's talking about running up on people from behind. These two lads just placated him for like 15 minutes talking shit. It was actually sad and pathetic. And that brings us to their new podcast, which seems to be going viral over on Twitter. The user handle Delinquent MMA managed to clip out a few bits of the now infamous podcast that has been taken down. And to be honest with you, I'm just being 100% honest. Seeing the pushback now on this Jaxxon podcast and this Bear dude is just delicious. Nobody has a good word to say about the way they approached this podcast, the manner in which they spoke to Bryce Mitchell, and it's actually refreshing to see so many people calling him out for what he is and what that podcast is, which is a ball of shit. Pathetic. This is the first public appearance by Bryce Mitchell after the infamous podcast/statements that he made about going fishing with a certain person. And to be honest with you, it's an extremely hard topic to try navigate because there's organizations with nice big letters in their name that get everybody shut down. Questioning anything can get everything shut down. That's about as vague as I can make things. But that's why there's not too many people actually coming out conversing about it, having a discussion. It is only people losing their mind for a number of different reasons. I'm so tired of seeing Ariel Helwani, Chael Sonnen, and Brian Callen, Brendan Schaub, Logan Paul and his co-host, Dana White. The list goes on and on and on of all these guys that are having meltdowns because of what Bryce Mitchell said and what he didn't say. And as I said, there's a number of different reasons why they're having these meltdowns. And obviously the number one reason why all these meltdowns are taking place is because of virtue signaling. And there's a huge sense of ignorance and low IQ on behalf of all these guys and what they're talking about. Brian Callen is talking about historians from Oxford and Harvard that have done 10 years of research, so they can't be wrong. And Bryce Mitchell, you're 100% wrong, young man. And these guys are the arbiters of truth and justice.
If you're surrounded by that, and that's your circle,
he's been indoctrinated in the wrong information.
Yes,
and I can't.
He doesn't have a background. He doesn't have a background in history. He doesn't know World War I. He doesn't know World War II. He has no context. No. So he sees all this stuff, and it's affirming. Maybe his buddy from high school told him. He's like, "Oh man,
I'm so glad." But let me tell you, the historians in universities who write books and come to conclusions. The way you do this, and I'm going to give, is that when you're a historian, what you do is you read the original archives, the records. You go to the Soviet archives, you read them in Russian. You go to the German archives. Right? The Germans were very, very, very specific record keepers. You read the diaries of the GIs that liberated those camps. Yep. You look at every piece of film. You look at the train ledgers. You look at all of that stuff.
They don't make numbers up.
No, they don't.
Let me inform you of something, Mr. Callen. Right now, there is Oxford and Harvard professors and historians that are 5 and 6 years into their research on the 2020 pandemic. And if you actually saw some of the notes that these guys put out in public regarding what happened in 2020, you would think that we were in the middle of the most apocalyptic time ever known to man. Millions and millions of people dropping dead in the street because of a virus. Is that what happened, Brian Callen? Could you not make it out your front door during the 2020 sickness because of the amount of people that had lost their lives because of the virus? You had to climb over bodies to get to your car. Is that what happened? Because that's how it's portrayed by said historians from Harvard and Oxford. But I'm sure they would never lie about anything else, especially this topic, right? They would never lie about this one, because there's no such thing as organizations with big letters in their name that come after you for even thinking about questioning anything. Sad. It's so sad to see these people having a meltdown, and it's so hard not to come out and make a video. It's so hard to come out and not give an opinion. And what I would implore anybody watching this video to do that is thinking, oh my god, this guy's a nut job, what I would implore you to do is put yourself in a situation where you're watching Bryce Mitchell's first podcast and he makes this infamous statement about going fishing, and replace the name of the person and maybe, I don't know, slot in Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, Vladimir Lenin, and ask yourself what the reaction would have been from Dana, from Callan, from Schaub, from Ariel, from all these guys who were extremely virtuous over the last couple of weeks. And I don't need to tell you, you already know the answer. It would have flown right underneath the radar. No one would have cared if Bryce Mitchell had said that Joseph Stalin was a really nice guy and I'd like to have a cup of tea with him and I'd like to go fishing with him. No one would have batted an eyelid. This is a man who was responsible for 22 million deaths between 32 and 34, predominantly Christian deaths. And I see people on the Logan Paul podcast who are of a certain ethnicity or of a certain religion screaming about it doesn't matter whether it was 6 million, whether it was 1 million, or whether it's even smaller numbers than that. Do you understand that there's still people alive now that are hurt, that feel close to what happened there?
So you're saying 6 million Jews didn't die. It might have been less than that. Okay, it was 1 million, let's say. It was 500. Who gives a fuck what the exact number was? We're talking about a horrific atrocity that continues to really fucking upset people whose family members died in these fucking camps.
And I would push back and I'd ask the question, is there any Christians left in today's society? I'm sure there is, maybe a couple of billion only. Communism, Stalin, Mao are responsible for hundreds of millions of deaths, and Bryce Mitchell could have said any one of their names and would not have received anywhere near the same pushback as what he did. And I would ask people to maybe have a little introspective look as to why that is. Let's have a little listen.
And before he committed all the atrocities.
Brother, you don't know him, right? You don't know the severity of what he did to the world. Obviously, I could tell you don't know for you to be able to even relaxedly say that word, that he was a good guy. And I'm not even going to give him the benefit of saying his name, but those extremist ideologies, the things he did to, millions of people, are some of the most disgusting, most evil things the world ever seen. Now, we're not going to give you a platform today to talk about anything that even remotely supports that.
No,
we're not going to give you a platform
I don't want
to justify what you said. And matter of fact, and me and Rampage talked about this, we're not even going to give you a platform to explain yourself on that. I personally just feel with the things that he did and the millions of people that died, there's no justification pre or post whatever you did say. Ain't nobody a good guy. And we as people, and me as a fan of MMA, right? As a fighter, I watch all your fights, right? You bring the Bible in the cage. You did some amazing things before that podcast. Rampage is an icon to me. I look up to Rampage. So when Rampage gets serious, even when he said, listen, man, I got a full-time Jewish chef. And Rampage, the only reason why he was accepting of even doing this podcast, we already had pre-booked you before that show, and we've been trying to get you on for about a year, right? Mm-hmm. And so Rampage said, I want to be able to see him face to face and explain to him the severity of what he did. Right. So at least if you didn't, you do understand what you did damages people's relationships with their family.
I don't know what to say about it, to be honest with you. It's infuriating. He invited Bryce on to not allow him to speak. Okay, I think it was a misstep by Bryce to even go near this podcast, especially given the fact that this dude is clearly so low IQ. I did a little bit of research. I don't really want to know much about him. The dude is famous because his father owns a paintballing company and he found a little bit of a hustle to sell some jewelry by tagging along with Rampage Jaxxon, and now he posts pictures of himself being jacked and trying to hit the heavy bag with UFC fighters. Fine, do whatever you gotta do, bro. But the first thing you need to do is really, really go and read a book. That's the first thing you need to do. And secondly, honest to God, I said it in a post that I put out yesterday on social media. If I'm Bryce Mitchell and I'm in that situation, I'm slapping the mouth off of you. And I don't give a flying fuck if Rampage is sitting there and he's your protector and he's the real deal. I don't care, bro. You don't talk to me like that. You don't talk to anybody like that. Who the fuck are you? Not to mention, you literally just sabotaged the podcast because it's so stupid what you said and the way you acted. It's literally beyond comprehension. Why did you bring him on if it was only to give out to him and treat him like a 5-year-old child? I don't know who's advising Bryce, but seriously, the worst thing you can do is bend the knee to people like this and to people like Chael Sonnen, Ariel Helwani, Brian Callen, Brendan Schaub, all these guys who were virtue signaling and running their mouth about what you said. Do not bend the knee to these people because there's ulterior motives behind their virtue and their vitriol and their anger. And whether they try to portray themselves as being organically upset or annoyed at what you said, it's fake. They are not. It's not organic because you just have to look at the likes of Joe Rogan putting out clips about said mustache man and what he actually said. And it's a viral clip. Everyone has seen it. Joe Rogan is saying, well, you know the way we all thought he said this? Well, actually, he wasn't saying that at all. He was saying this.
Now is they can translate like Hitler's speech. They've got Hitler's speeches that Hitler gave in German. And you see those things, those speeches. I thought it was all like, we gotta exterminate the Jews. That's not what he said.
Why don't they go after Joe? How come Joe doesn't have to apologize for that? How come Joe didn't feel the wrath from Chael or from Brian Callen and Brendan Schaub and all them guys? How come he didn't feel the wrath of Logan Paul and his co-host Mike or whatever the fuck that guy's name is? Because that doesn't benefit them. There's no virtue to be got from a fight that you can't win because Joe is way bigger than them guys and it wouldn't go well for them. But they know they're on this train where everyone believes they have to feel a certain way and talk about things in a certain way. So it's like, okay, it's status quo. Let me put on a mask. Let me take an injection. Let me get in a queue to go into a supermarket and show my little card so I can buy some bread and milk. Good little farm animals. That's all these guys are. I can't show any more and I don't want to watch any more of these clips from Bear and his Jaxxon podcast. It's pathetic. It's actually pathetic. But what is extremely refreshing and white-pilling is to see how many people across social media in the comment section are roasting this absolute tool. And Rampage, if he had any sense about him, who I don't think is to blame here at all, he has some really good takes. One of them isn't having a Jewish cook who is upset. That's why I don't want to give you your voice here on my podcast, Bryce Mitchell. Whatever that is. I do think Rampage is decent and has an open mind and was willing to listen. Little bit of advice. Get rid of that little rat, that cretin. Get him out, bro. Get him out, the fuck. This guy is going to drag you down into the gutter because he's just a virtue signaler. He's an opportunist. He is riding the bollocks out of your coattails because you were a legend within the UFC. And this guy is posting up pictures of him and Hoist Gracie. Him and Chuck Liddell, me and Ken Shamrock. Hey, everybody on Instagram, have a look at me. I'm 5'1", I'm absolutely jacked. And I'm here with Ken Shamrock and Chuck Liddell. Yeah. Buy my gold watch. Get the fuck out of here, you absolute loser.